From the Western Mass News studios in Springfield, this is Western Mass News Getting Answers with Dave Mattson.
Good to have you with us for this week's edition of Western Mass News Getting Answers. Each and every week, I'm joined by community and business leaders and political leaders, too, to talk about the issues that impact all of us. My guest this week is Northampton Mayor Gina Sciarra. Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Dave. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
To have you back on the program. Saw you a couple of weeks ago at the annual Mayor's Forum. And
that's always a fun time.
That's always
Get
fun.
a bunch of mayors together, there's a lot to say.
That is. We need 5 hours instead of an hour
easily.
for that. Lots going on between federal budget cuts and coming up with your budget for the city and everything else. So let's get to it. I know you recently released your $145 million fiscal year budget for the city. School funding making up 43% of the expenditures. $43 million for the public schools, $11 million for Smith Vocational. An increase of about 8% from about double your original proposal. Let's talk about that, because I know there was a lot of public pressure about putting more money into the schools.
Yeah, so our fiscal year FY25 that we're in right now, it actually ended up, there were some mid-year appropriations. It ended up being more like a 9.8% increase that we've had this year. And then for FY26, which the council is going to vote on this week, we are looking at a 5.88% increase for the schools. Every year that I've been mayor, there's been at least a 5% increase, which, as far as we can tell, hasn't. I mean, we know it hasn't happened in the last 50 years. We don't know if it's ever happened in Northampton.
Sure.
So it is a historic investment in the Northampton Public Schools, a 31% increase over these 4 years. Nevertheless, we need more funding in schools. We're seeing this everywhere in Western Mass, across the Commonwealth. The special ed costs are increasing. All of our other costs are increasing. There's increasing need in our schools since the pandemic. There's just not enough funding for our schools, and the state really needs to step up.
And that's what we want to move on to. Local legislators have long advocated, and I know municipal leaders too, for the state to rewrite that formula for which the state dollars flow to local cities and towns. Chapter 70 money. How crucial is rewriting that? I know you touched on that, but it's been a long time since they have been rewritten.
It's absolutely crucial, and huge kudos to our state senator Joe Comerford and our representative Lindsay Sabadosa. They are really pushing for some kind of Chapter 70 reform and to crack open that formula and to look at it. You know, Chapter 70 in Northampton only accounts for 16% of what we spend on our schools. That is half of what it started at when ed reform happened in 1993. So it's been decreasing all this time, and now it's only 16%. It's one of the lowest percentages in our area. And, you know, at the same time, what Northampton actually spends on schools has increased 137% in that time. So that's being made up by the people of Northampton. And we believe very strongly in our schools. We believe in supporting them.
Sure.
But the state really needs to do more in terms of state aid. Also in terms of helping with special education circuit breaker and funding that, transportation needs. There are all sorts of needs that we're experiencing in our districts. I want to give a huge shout out actually to the Northampton Youth Commission, who brought the Department of Education Secretary Patrick Tutwiler to Northampton last week, and not just for Northampton to talk about it, but brought in 6 other districts. Some of them were regional, some of them were local, but to talk to him about what we're all experiencing and how we really need the state to look at their formulas and make some changes.
Are they hearing what you're saying? What you're asking for?
They are, but you know, things move slowly at the state. Secretary Tutwiler said that he will follow the lead of the legislature. Of course, as I said, our state legislators are pushing this very hard, but we need the rest of the state to agree that this needs to be looked at. And there are a lot of districts. Again, this is happening across the state. Districts are having huge deficits. You're hearing about override votes. You're hearing about layoffs. And we're all really feeling it. In public education, costs are just skyrocketing and needs are skyrocketing, but the state isn't keeping up.
Well, I mean, we talk about it. It's like, by law with Proposition 2.5, you're only supposed to increase by 2.5% every year, but the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, we talk about 43% of all expenditures for the city come from the school department. As you look at that, I know the numbers that I found, most municipalities had budgeted for a 7 to 9% increase in healthcare costs, only to see those numbers be much higher. I know in Northampton, for your most popular plan with the Group Insurance Commission, it's rising 10.5%. Is it time to reevaluate Proposition 2.5? And the way, because it really does restrict what you can do when you see, as you say, when you see expenses going up by 8, 9, 10%.
Yeah, I feel like this is a wild thing for me to say, but we were lucky this year that we only have about a 10% increase in our health insurance. Other communities are seeing much larger increases.
Right.
So that is our second largest expense in our budget after education. And that's a fixed cost. We can't do anything about that. So we're seeing our health insurance increase by $1.4 million this year. That's about 22% of all of the new revenue that we can raise for this next year. So it's already taking about a quarter of our new revenue. So that's something that's really, really hard for municipalities to be able to handle. I would love to see the state also look at some sort of reform or regulation, and something that helps everyone, and not just shifting the burden of healthcare costs to employees or to others, right? That we find some way to
Because that's
regulate
what you see in the
this.
private sector. I know, they'll shift the costs over, but obviously under contract and things like that, you can't do that, can you?
It would have to be negotiated.
Yeah, negotiated, right.
And so Northampton has an 80-20 split for our most popular plan, the HMO, and a 50-50 split employer to employee, city to employee for PPO plans. And that's a very generous split.
Sure.
But that's something that we've maintained for many, many years. And so again, I'd rather see us have some kind of reform that helps everybody and doesn't just burden someone else.
Well, again, getting back to Proposition 2.5, it's been on the books for 45 years now. And in 1980, it worked fairly well. But in 2025, it really doesn't, does it?
It doesn't. And we're all experiencing everywhere in our lives, right? Things grow more than 2.5%. So in Northampton, we have what we call the Fiscal Stability Plan that was created in 2013. And it's it's an agreement with the people of Northampton that we will have periodic overrides to account for the fact that if we want to maintain our services, not even grow our services,
Sure.
but maintain our services, we need to raise more revenue than 2.5%. And so there was a successful override in 2013. We had one in 2020 right before the pandemic. So it was implemented in FY22. And we will need another one at some point soon, probably next year. That's something that the people of Northampton thus far have, by referendum, have agreed to do. But everyone's feeling the pinch everywhere.
Sure.
So it's, I think Prop 2.5 needs to be looked at, but we certainly experience the rise in costs and expenses in the city, but everyone's feeling it in their lives too.
Would it make more sense to tie it to cost of living? As far as that, at least get that kind of an increase if the cost of living is 3.5%, allow you to raise taxes by 3.5%?
It certainly would help us to be able to meet the needs in our cities and towns.
Sure. It is, and I mean, you talk to anyone, whether it's small town or a medium-sized city, that these challenges are not going away, and obviously you can't go to free cash all the time either. I mean, that somewhere along the way that's going to run out.
Right. I mean, you need to have stable recurring revenue that that you can build into your budget. Northampton's lucky because we do have a vibrant downtown. We
Sure.
have we have business and excise tax that comes in and helps boost our revenues. Smaller towns don't necessarily have that, but we can only in this budget we are actually leaning very hard on our other revenues and pushing them as much as possible to be able to get more education funding into our budget. But you can only push that so far, and we are in incredibly uncertain economic times.
Sure.
So it comes with risk.
And you can't take from one department to give to another either. 'Cause
No.
everybody has needs.
Everybody has needs. All of my departments could use more funding, and so this year we've kept them very tight to allow for more education funding. And actually, we're investing in public safety as well. So we've had a huge increase in calls in fire rescue. And we've been looking at this for the past few years, and so we're building in some firefighters into our budget, which is a big increase for public safety, but it's desperately needed because calls are up.
Sure, all these challenges in the year 2025.
Yep.
We have to take a break. When we come back, Mayor Sciarra and I are going to talk about Trump administration threats to sanctuary cities like Northampton. Welcome back to Getting Answers. My guest this week is Northampton Mayor Gina Louise Sciarra. I want to talk about federal budget cuts and the potential impact on your budget proposal before we move on to talk about some other things. But it's, I mean, there's so much unknown as to what's going on in Washington. Seems like it changes every day.
It absolutely changes every day. And so we have some knowns that we've actually already, incorporated into the budget. And then there's just a world of unknowns. So we know that in our Department of Health and Human Services, we have 2 grants that have already been cut. One is the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant. That's for $121,000. And that Northampton provides regional emergency preparedness for all of Hampshire County. And so that's being cut. And the impact on our budget is we are freezing a public health nurse position that is vacant and not hiring for that until we know that we can get funding for it. The other thing is the Bureau of Infectious Disease and Laboratory Sciences grant that we get. That's $283,000, and that supports infectious disease monitoring, public health nursing, and community vaccine clinics, things that have been critical for us in the last few years. And so that's being cut. And, we are committed to trying to figure out how we're still going to provide those services, but that's a huge hit to our Health and Human Services budget. So that's what we know right now. And then there are all the unknowns. We don't know what's going to happen with school entitlement grants like Title I or IDEA that supports low-income students and students with disabilities. That could be a loss of over $1 million for our schools. So we're in this waiting game, as is the state, which 25% of state funding comes from federal funding.
Right.
So if the state loses that, the impact, that is going to be felt across the Commonwealth will be devastating.
Are we making these cuts? Do they give you any rhyme or reason why they're cutting, or are they just straight out cuts? We're not giving them money.
Straight out cuts. We don't believe in doing infectious disease monitoring anymore right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we talked about this before the break, that the Trump administration, obviously they took aim at Northampton and several other cities and towns in Massachusetts, signing that executive order allowing law enforcement to take more action against sanctuary cities. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said in a statement, "We're exposing these sanctuary politicians who harbor criminal illegal aliens and defy federal law." Since that statement was made, the Trump administration this week backed off of that a little bit. But your reaction to that threat?
Well, we've been very clear that we remain a welcoming, inclusive, and equitable community. And
the governor's doubled down on that, too.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we will absolutely follow the laws and policies of our city and our state. We have a safe city policy that is in accordance with federal law. Federal immigration policy is outside the authority of our local law enforcement. And we are not legally obligated to assist the federal government in enforcing immigration policies, and we will not do that. But I also urge the federal government to follow their laws and not defy the Constitution, and to respect due process. And what I expect us to follow laws, but I also expect my federal government to follow the laws and the Constitution of this country.
Well, it's terrifying, too. I mean, the incident over the weekend, I think it was in Milton, the 17-year-old young volleyball player, just on his way to practice, was arrested by ICE because they were actually looking for his father. I mean,
it's unconscionable.
Yeah. And I see you must see this every day.
I mean, we have people who are very frightened, and they should be frightened. What we're seeing happen is terrifying and unconstitutional, and that they're violating judicial orders is horrifying.
All right. Well, let's talk about a few brighter things as far as downtown is concerned. Last time you were here, we talked about Picture Main Street. That $29 million reconstruction of downtown business district. That's been pushed up to 2026. What are we looking at there? Once they get going, it's all hands on deck?
It is,
Yeah.
although it is not going to be heavy construction the entire time.
Right.
So, and it will be done in phases. So Main Street's not going to be closed. One of the things that we are correcting is we have a very wide Main Street. That also allows us during construction to have, to move lanes over and have traffic flow while we're constructing a segment of the street. So this is an absolutely critical project for Northampton. And it's correcting a significant safety problem that we have. We're in the top 5% for crashes in our downtown. So this is, MassDOT has said, we have to make changes here. But it also allows us to do some really remarkable things, like fix our underground infrastructure. We have water and sewer pipes that are over 100 years old. We've been having failings of them. So this is a great opportunity to be able to do that infrastructure at a lower cost to the city, since we're doing that construction anyway on Main Street. And we also will address some vibrant, so Northampton's known for being a vibrant, welcoming city where people want to be in. But how we use downtowns has changed, right?
Yeah.
Online retail isn't going away. We need to find other ways to bring people downtown. So this is going to create cooling spaces. We're doubling our tree canopy. It is going to create more welcoming and open space for people to congregate and gather. It's outdoor dining has been incredibly successful since the pandemic, and so we use parking spaces for that now. We're going to be building that infrastructure into our sidewalks, which are going to be wider and allow more use for people on our streets.
Well, it's nice while you have it, but some of the stuff on the side of the street is not all that appealing, really. But it works.
It works, but how beautiful will it be when it's built into our sidewalks and we have that space for people to dine outside and be together and come downtown and enjoy our businesses. We really need to find ways to bring people back downtown, and Picture Main Street's a fabulous project that is going to revitalize.
More of a European flair to it.
Yeah.
More than anything else. I know, while it's designed to provide more safety for pedestrians and more space, Safe Paradise City members worry about safety, the loss of parking, the disruption caused by unexpected 3 years of construction.
So again, the parking, right now, outdoor dining has started for the season. The spaces that are used, we use parking spaces for outdoor dining.
Right.
That's the same number of spaces we're going to lose in construction. So every summer we welcome outdoor dining and that changed use of that space. So it's not going to be a change in terms of the number of spaces. This is addressing significant safety issues. Also accessibility. We have incredibly long crosswalks.
Yeah.
And so it's going to make them much shorter, much safer for pedestrians, for people in wheelchairs, much easier visibility. We also, our downtown is built on a hill, so we have lots of places where crossings are tilted, which is and in need of repair. So that's really hard for someone in a wheelchair or someone pushing, a carriage. Baby stroller. We don't call them carriages anymore. And so we will be bringing up and leveling those crossings and just making it safer and easier for everyone to be able to be there. And we have lots of people who bike downtown, so we want to encourage. We want everyone to come downtown, right? That's what everyone needs across our country. We need to bring people back together into these spaces and support our businesses. And so we want people to be able to walk and bike and drive downtown and have it be comfortable and usable.
And hopefully fill a lot of those vacant storefronts. Although there aren't as many, but they're starting to fill up.
Yeah, we've had a bunch of businesses come in this year. There's always rotation, but people really believe in Northampton, and I've cut a bunch of ribbons in the last few months. So we have to support those businesses.
All right. We're going to take another break. But when we come back, the mayor and I talk about some changes being made to Northampton's building code. Stay with us. Welcome back to our last segment with Northampton Mayor Gina Louise Sciarra. Earlier this year, the City Council updated the city's building code, making Northampton one of 10 municipalities in the state to adopt the climate-friendly building policy that bans the use of polluting fuels for heating and powering appliances in new buildings. All new buildings or renovations to existing structures must have all electric appliances and heating systems. What's the reaction to that from developers?
So we had already adopted the stretch code, which gets you most of the way there. So it isn't really a big change from where we already had been for a while. I know that some developers were concerned about it, but we haven't seen a drop in permits. We've seen projects going forward, and they've been being developed and designed for air source heat pumps and electric.
I know. My question is, with something like this, when affordable housing is at such a premium, all up and down the Pioneer Valley, are you at all concerned about how these changes, what that could do to housing prices, increasing costs on them?
Well, we actually have are creating a lot of affordable housing units in Northampton, actual affordable housing units. So since I've been mayor, 190 units either have been developed or in development, including some really big projects. So there's the former nursing home on Bridge Road is set to be completed in October. That's 60 units of affordable housing, a lot of it family housing, which is really critical. So we are seeing a lot of affordable housing being built. And we are seeing people still interested in building in Northampton at every level, and interested in being part of our real estate market. So it hasn't,
good to hear,
it hasn't really impacted.
So even at the new development, I know the mixed-use building on 3 Elm Street, the parking lot of the old St. Mary's of the Assumption Church, that's moving forward pretty rapidly now, I think.
That is moving forward, and that was also built to the stretch code, so it's built with electric.
We're in our last minute, but I know you're finishing up your first term, and you're running for a second term this fall.
I am, yes. I am running for re-election. There's a preliminary in September, and then the general will be in November. And I'm really excited to just have in-depth conversations about what's happening in Northampton.
Yeah, and from what I've seen too, I mean, you got 2 challenges, but everything seems to be positive. They haven't taken shots at you really.
It's early,
so
but
far, but I mean, they're talking,
Yeah.
but this is what they want to do, their vision, rather than
Yeah, and I'm
critical.
so happy to have that conversation
Yeah.
and hear what their vision is, and talk about the real issues that are happening in Northampton. It's when I started as mayor, it was the big, still sort of the pandemic, and a lot's happened.
All right, we're out of time. Mayor Sciarra, thanks for being with us.
Thank
Come
you.
back again.
Absolutely.
We'll have to do it after the election.
Okay,
All
sounds
right.
good.
That does it for us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.